Welcome to the Reformer Introduction. In this video, I'm going to be explaining each component of the Reformer. When you go and teach a class, it's important that you start the class by making sure you're addressing anyone that hasn't done Reformer Pilates before. So I always make sure I know everyone in the class, and if I don't, I sit down with them, and even if they have done Reformer Pilates before, I say, I just want to quickly run through the machine with you. I want to explain what I call different parts of the machine, because anywhere that you go, you might have a different machine. So different brands use different colors or numbers of springs. The headrest can be different, the straps can be different. So I'm going to explain that in this video, and then I want you to practice at the end, you looking at the picture in your manual and going through labeling the Reformer and practicing explaining it to someone as if it's their first time. Okay, so let's start at the top. At the top of the Reformer, we have these two black poles that are sticking up, and they're connected to the pulleys. So these are adjustable on most machines. So if you loosen this and you move the pulley up and you brought the pole up higher, it would affect how far down the straps come. Now, I actually don't change this too frequently, but if you are doing a class and you notice that the straps are rubbing on the shoulder rest or getting too close to the client, if they're particularly tall or particularly large, so with a higher BMI, you can elevate the length of those poles. I pretty much keep them where they are most of the time though. So the pulleys have this rope attached to them, which I just talked about. The rope is adjustable, and at the start of your class, you always want to make sure that both of the ropes are the same length. So I'm easily sliding the carriage around because I have no springs on. So I'm going to put one spring on and lock it into place, and then you can see that there's tension on my ropes. Now I want to make sure that they are nice and equal at the start of the class, because we don't want to have one shorter than the other, because then the client or the patient is going to feel uneven when they're doing the exercise. So always check the length of the ropes. Your clients will let you know as well if they are uneven, okay? The ropes on this particular machine actually go underneath, and they attach underneath, and that's how you change the length. So I would get underneath and then I would shorten it to make sure that I shorten it, or I'd loosen it and pull the rope out to make it a little bit longer. We will go through that in the course as well. Some machines you can change it up here. It's not the quickest thing to change, so much easier if you do that at the start of the class rather than halfway through an exercise, okay? So always try and do it at the start. Going on from here, we then have the runners. So some are made out of wood, some are made out of aluminium, and yeah, many different materials, all pretty much do the same thing. They are called the runners or the frame. You can actually put your hands on them, put your feet on them for some exercises. For example, you're going to be learning an exercise called reverse abs. And that is one in which, when I describe it, I would say, okay, knees up against the shoulder rest, hands are going to go on the runners, and then they would pull themselves forward, okay? So they are the runners or the frame. Keeping moving down in this direction, we then have our headrest. When we talk about injuries, the headrest is a really important one for people with cervical or neck pain. So you can actually easily lift this up on this machine, and then you can see that my headrest is elevated, and then you can drop it down as well. On most machines, you'll find that it actually doesn't come up too high. So I usually also give my patient a pillow or a yoga block, or use their towel to get a little bit more elevation, particularly in our side lie series or anything where they're laying on their back. So for example, I'm going to lay down on the machine, and you will see that my neck actually looks quite comfortable. But for some people, they'll be looking back like this. If we elevate the headrest, you want to see that they have a slight chin tuck to decrease the pressure on the cervical spine. From here, we're going to then explore the shoulder rest. So these are our shoulder rests. The shoulders, like I was just laying down, go up against the shoulder rest. On some machines, which is actually really good, you can take the shoulder rest out. On this particular machine, they're locked in there, so I can't show you that. Then attached to the shoulder rest, we have these straps. Now these straps click on and off, so I can easily wash them, which is really great. Some are just attached permanently. So these are the straps. You will see that there is a short and a long strap. The long strap is usually for feet in straps. So you put your feet in here. The short straps are usually for the hands. What you can do though, if you're performing a particular exercise and you just want to make it a tiny bit easier without changing the client setup or changing the machine setup, you could just say, okay, if it is too hard, take your hands back into the long strap so it's just a little bit easier. We will again go through this in the course in our modifications, but that's just starting to introduce the idea of the straps. Most of the time, 90% of the time, hands in the short strap, feet in the long straps. Sometimes you can change that as well. I like to store these on the shoulder rest. Some machines have poles that you can hook them onto. What you want to try and avoid, particularly with the straps that have the metal here, is when the client's laying down, once they're done with the machine, you need to tell them where to put their straps. So I always say, before we stand up, please put your your straps on the shoulder rests, or please place them carefully down on the ground behind you, because I've had many people just throw them and then the metal hits the frame. And if you have aluminium or wood, it's still going to, over time, damage the machine. So make sure you tell your clients, okay, so this is the frame, this is the headrest, these are the straps, explain them how I've explained it to you, and then say, once we finish the exercise, make sure you please place them on the shoulder rest or gently down on the ground in the well. From here, we're then going to explore the carriage. This is the carriage. So with the carriage, some machines have different lengths and widths. They're generally the same size. They can lay on here, you can stand on here, you can kneel on here. Really great piece of equipment. This then, coming down from here, is the platform extender. I love this brand of reformers because they have a platform extender. Lots of places don't, and they'll just have a really tiny platform, but you can use this to stand, and I'll show you in a second once we get further down the machine, but you can use it to stand on. You can use it on the ground as well. So if I'm doing an exercise like this, I'm standing on the platform. Underneath the platform, we then have springs, which we will go through in the course. This brand of reformer has colored springs, so red, blue, and white. Red is the hardest, okay? So that's equivalent to 1 spring on the machines that have numbers. Then we have the blue spring. That is equivalent to half a spring. So if on this machine I say 1 red, 1 blue, somewhere else where you're teaching that has numbered springs, they might say 1.5 springs. We also have the white spring as an option. That is 1/4 of a spring. So that's a really great option if I want to do an exercise on 1 red and a blue and I try it and it's just a little bit too hard, but then the red is too easy. I'd put my white on. It's that tiny, it's perfect amount just to make it a tiny bit harder. So we've got those as well. In the course, I'm going to explain more the gear bar. I'll just show you quickly now in this video. But we have a gear bar. So that's where the spring's attached into. There's actually 3 settings for the gear bar. So there's one furthest away, so furthest towards the end of the machine. Now, if this is furthest away, when I push the carriage out, there's going to be more resistance on the springs. Versus if I have it closest to me, in that closest setting, if I press out, there's not going to be as much resistance. So that's another way to change the resistance of the exercise. Again, like these poles, I don't really change this unless I have someone that is very tall, or you probably won't be teaching people with knee injuries too frequently, or that are undergoing rehabilitation in a clinical setting. But if you are, this is a good tool if they can't get full knee flexion. So if they're really tall or they have decreased knee range of motion, then this is something you would look at changing. So if they want to work a little bit harder, you can use the top one, or if they can't bend their knee as much and come all the way down, you can change where the bar is as well. But again, that would be more in a clinical setting, more one-on-one or two-on-one rehabilitation style classes. We also have, talking about knee range, the stopper. Most machines have them. On this one, it can come out and in. On some of them, they just have little blocks that fold down, and it stops the machine coming all the way in. So take note of where my carriage is now. If I put this stopper in, then I can only come down to here. So when I go out and come down, it's going to decrease my range. I'll show you another example. So I've placed a spring on just for tension. Take note of my knee range here. So I press out and I come back down, and it's going to stop me here. Whereas if I take the pulley away, if I take the stopper away, I can come all the way back down here, and you can see how much more flexion I am getting at the knee. So if I were that really tall person or the person with the knee injury and I didn't want to bend my knee all the way, you could just move where the stopper is, so I'm only coming down to here versus full knee flexion. Another thing that we can change is this foot bar. So this is your foot bar, hands and feet, forearms, everything can go on the foot bar. Generally it's for the feet, and starting with simple exercises first. Think of it mostly for the feet. But when we are changing the height of the foot bar, there's 3 settings on this type of machine. So this is the top setting. Then if we lift this bar up, drop it down, you can see that the bar stops a little bit lower. There's one more setting, and then you can have it completely flat here. Now, what lots of studio owners do not like is when you let your students just pull the bar up without lifting this bottom part. So I'm going to show you, and you will hear this. You do not want a class of 8, 10, 14 people doing this. Okay? So when we are actually bringing the bar back up, you want to lift this bar up, and then you can lift the foot bar up and lock it into place. Much better for the machine, much better for the ears, and you need to educate your patient or your client on that when you are first explaining the machine to them. So there might have been somewhere else where they thought that was appropriate, but once you're coming down the machine, you can just say, when you lift the foot bar up, please make sure that you elevate this bottom bar so it doesn't bang. We'll go through that again in the course, but the foot bar comes down usually for our standing series, and this is where the platform extender comes into play as well. So if I place that on there, you can actually stand up on the machine. Now, we are going to go through in detail the safety, but it's good just to get it in your head at the moment. When we're standing up on the machine, you never want to stand on the carriage first because that is the moving component of the machine. You don't want anyone falling off in your class. So if I had a really light spring on and I stood up on here and it moved, I'm at risk of falling. Whereas you always want to explain to people, please stand up on the platform extender first because that part can't move. So we're going to stand up here with our left leg. You might want to have both feet there, or you might say go left leg and then the right leg can go on the carriage itself. And then we can do our standing series. The last thing I would like to go through is the box because that's a really important piece of equipment that we're going to be using with the reformer. So this is our reformer box. There's two ways that you can place the box on the machine. So this is called long box. So I use this for people with sore knees, knee injuries, if they're a bit older. Pregnancy is really great for, because instead of kneeling on the machine doing our back series facing this way, if your person has sore knees, they can actually sit on the box and perform the exercises. So I use long box for back series like this generally, or we can do some other series that we'll go through in the course, but you can also lay on your stomach on the box when we have the foot bar up as well. So this is our long box, and then this is called short box. And I usually use short box when I'm performing the chest series because you can sit on the box this way. You would grab your straps off the shoulder rest and we could perform our upper body series like this. The box is also a really great piece of equipment for when we're doing exercises called scooters and lunges. You know how I had the platform extender on the ground? You can also do that with the box, but that's just a little bit of an insight as to how the course will run. So I will introduce an exercise, we will talk about the cueing formula, which is going to be another video that you will watch, and I want you to really understand the cueing formula before you come to the course, because I believe that is integral to being a good teacher, is being able to concisely explain an exercise so that everyone is doing it right at the same time, and then you can start to make things harder and easier once everyone's going, so your class isn't so start-stop. But we'll go through the cueing formula in our next video.